So you'll see from this cartoon, what we're really trying to do here in Work Package 2 is look at what are the skills required in 2030 for the clean energy transition from then to 2050. So, and those are skills and skilled professions, as well as sort of some of the organizational competencies that are required to support this, because we know that it's not enough just to have focus on the individual skills, but you also need to look at, the organizations, and are they ready to implement and adopt some of the new skills and practices that are required. And then, we're starting looking at what's currently in the market in terms of development and training, or education and training for all the professions and skilled or professionals and allied services that are required to deliver those skills. And then what's the gap, and how, and start proposing some pathways for closing that gap. Obviously, in a short period of time, this is sort of really indicative and just starting to map that. But what sits behind it is obviously the question of, if we want to have a successful, reliable and clean energy system, we probably do need new skills. The whole energy system is changing. And so what are those skills and how can we best deliver it? So that's really what this work package is about. If you can go to the next one, thanks, Holly. So underpinning that then is sort of really high level kind of research questions. As I said, what are the skills and the skills professionals required in 2030 to deliver this clean energy transition? Linked to that is a question around energy literacy, and that is sort of, we'll just in the scope give it sort of a, not sufficient justice in terms of energy literacy, because that's a very big topic on its own, but really looking at the energy literacy required by what we call sort of trusted advisors. So those are either sort of the electricians or bankers or mortgage brokers or energy brokers that advise clients on, when, especially residential and small business clients, when they make purchasing decisions, how are they best placed to advise clients on that. So that's the number one. Number two is then, what are the organizational capabilities or maturity models required to support this? As I said, it's not enough to just focus on the individuals, and we know from other sectors that a broader focus is also required, because people might have some of the capabilities, but they might not be able to deploy it sufficiently, or the skills might be there, but the organization might not regularly practice it or put it into place. The third one question is then around the gaps in current education and training programs. So that's, will be underpinned by, what's a scan of what's currently happening. And then fourthly, what are some of the pathways for potentially closing the gap between what's required and what is. Thanks, Ali. And then the process, again, on a very high level, around activity one is really looking at the skills required. So that's a desktop review, because there have been a few studies that have been conducted locally and really abroad on skills and the skills of the energy skills of the future. We will then, from those preliminary high-level findings, validate that with a IG reference group at a dedicated work package 2 workshop, and then also do further mapping of the required capabilities. So, using the expertise, the vast expertise that's available within this reference group. And then we will do a bit of work on kind of the skills and workforce maturity. And that, again, hoping to draw on the partners in the reference group to, maybe help us a bit with, and a few other organizations to sort of look through workforce maturity. And the activity 2 is and focus on this current skills and training. So what is currently happening in the market, and this goes through sort of TAFE, higher education, professional development, so across that sort of education spectrum, and also a little bit in the energy literacy. So I said for those those trusted advisors. And then the third part is based on these two. How do we kind of close the gap? And as I said, this, I don't propose that we'll get there all the way, but as it was said in the introduction, these opportunity assessments are really almost shaping and scoping the research that needs to be done. And I guess this will sort of really point out some of those directions of development and research going forward over the next 9 or so years of how can we close the gap. And then, you know, the second to last slide, just some of the questions, and I think we'll start grappling with that later. And in the other work groups is, you know, again, what can we learn from the work that's done elsewhere? And maybe some of you have been involved in other sectors, you know, or other CRCs. So what can we learn from there? Similar to Jay's point, you know, where do we really stop and start? You know, so when does someone sort of, you know, it's easy to identify people who are studying, you know, engineering or studying, you know, to be electrical contractors, but there's obviously, you know, how does it get into in civil engineering where people do energy efficiency for buildings? You know, so where do you sort of draw that line around kind of skills and training? How do we best make sure that the work we do speaks to the workforce planning and the innovation pathways that Sam is leading, so that these are not just three distinct pieces of work, but they really support each other well. You know, how do we make use of this incredible expertise in the reference group? And also, how do we do things around skills and training, which can be built into what will hopefully then become this biennial survey that for the workforce sizing. So, you know, how do we build in some questions and things around skills and education? And, you know, finally, it's just to outline who's sort of working on this, but if you already introduced part of the team in the final slide. So it's Professor Annette Boss from MSDI, the Monash Term Development Institute, then Scott Ferraro, who heads up the Net Zero Initiative at Monash, Sarah Goodwin, who's part of the Monash Energy Initiative, myself, and we'll have another researcher. Sort of the five of us will lead the work on this work package. Thanks, Holly.